I'm Manon Buettner, and I'm the founder and principal of Nuvalo, a Seattle-based managed services firm specializing in data center consulting, strategies, cloud computing, architecture, and deployments globally. And I've had the pleasure of knowing Grant for a couple of years now, and have been wanting to do this for a while because I think that the company that he's founded 3 years ago now is doing something incredibly unique in the business, in the industry, and where a lot of the data center providers are choosing where they'd like to be located and deciding on which hardware and software they're using and the services that they're offering and productizing it. Grant's really turned that on its side and has taken a totally different approach to it that's getting a lot of positive response and traction in the market. So thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
In my first video interview.
Thank you, Manon.
So if we could start by just having you introduce yourself and give a little bio and lead into how you came to be here today and how you started Unitas Global.
Sure, thank you. Hi, I'm Grant Kirkwood. I'm the CEO of Unitas Global. We're a managed service provider, infrastructure as a service, and private cloud provider. We service primarily enterprise organizations around the world, enabling their businesses to be more agile through the use of technology. I come from a long history of service provider background. My previous company, Mzima Networks, was a global network service provider. We built 65 points of presence around the world, and applying really a lot of the things that we learned about enterprise IT, technology drivers, and global relationships and partners to build Unitas Global.
So some of the companies that you've been involved with in the past have led you all around the world to install networks, and I'm sure that ties into how you've been able to build this company and make it global so quickly, right? Using those connections and experience that you have. Can you talk a little bit about that, how that really helped kind of pave the way for you to launch Unitas?
Sure. Well, I mean, one of the first things that we identified is that within the space, like you said, you've kind of got data center operators that have a very fixed footprint and geographic scope, and then network operators that are constrained by where their network assets physically are deployed. Mm-hmm. One of the things that we did in our last business, building a global network, was identify where our customers wanted us to be, and then we built into those places. And you're right, we spent a lot of time and energy developing relationships with network partners and facility operators and IT service providers in lots of countries all around the world. So one of the things that we first set out to do when we founded Unitas was to take away the geographic constraints that most service providers have. Every company is different. Every company has a different footprint in terms of where they are. An oil and gas company is going to have a very different geographic footprint than a travel industry company. And so by removing the limitation of where we work, we can really meet our goal of serving as a common point of reference for customers, a point of interaction for them to come to. And that's one of our core competencies.
Similar to private cloud, managed services as a term is described by different people in different ways. The providers, the end users, everybody's got their own interpretation of it. So I'm interested to hear how you and Unitas are defining managed services and really how that helps play into the story that you're telling and how you're differentiating yourself.
Well, you're right. I mean, it seems like I hear a different definition for managed services every day, and private cloud too. These are, particularly in the cloud space, this is very new terminology. Managed services is a more established business, but ultimately the point of managed services is to allow companies to take the responsibility for some portion of their IT infrastructure and outsource that to a third-party organization. Mm-hmm. The actual elements that they outsource and the actual technologies that are used to do that are different from company to company. And so I think to a certain extent, managed services can mean what an individual company wants it to mean, right? So for one company, it might be, well, we've got this data center and we've got this infrastructure and we need help managing it. Mm-hmm. To another company, it might mean, we need this infrastructure and we don't have it, go build it for us and provide it to us. And those are two very different things. But at the end of the day, they accomplish the same thing. They allow the company to focus on what they do, what their business applications are, and what their core competencies are. Mm-hmm. So the how might be different, but the why tends to be the same.
What's the takeaway for companies that are hearing this, or people that are hearing this, about how you are delivering these services separate from other service providers that are in the market?
We think that we fit in an interesting space in the industry. There's a plethora of providers at one end of the spectrum that are almost retail IT services. And by that I mean they provide public or private cloud resources, mm-hmm. or dedicated hosting infrastructure in an almost click-to-buy fashion, right? Mm-hmm. So you can go on a website and order dedicated servers or hosting and have that provisioned and almost without human interaction. So it's kind of a self-service model. And then at the other end of that same spectrum, you have large global IT outsourcing companies that have hundreds of thousands of employees, and an engagement with them consists of 20 people marching into your office for a week and billing you hourly, mm-hmm. Professional services fees. And both of those models have significant merit and significant traction and customer base. But we really feel like there's a large majority of the space that's untouched in between those two. Companies that want the global footprint and the breadth of experience and expertise in a wide variety of subject matters, mm-hmm. But that also want it to be easy to consume and easy to manage, and not have to feel like they have to go through layers of bureaucracy to get things done. Mm-hmm. So one of our strongest assets is that we're a small boutique company. We're very nimble and very adaptable, but we do have global resources. We have relationships and people and facilities all over the world, and so we can bring that level of footprint and expertise to the table to companies that might not get the attention of those large IT outsourcing companies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the things that I've been realizing as I do more and more of the international colo and managed services space is that domestic companies are really intimidated by the compliance and security requirements, and they're very open to letting expert resources come in and basically tell them what they need to do instead of trying to figure out how to put a solution together individually. And then like the situation we're currently working on, where they're looking at bringing hardware and software into a country that they've never done any business in before, and it's a daunting task setting up satellite offices and connecting all of those things. So I imagine that those are the kind of companies that are really leaning on you to offload all of the risk, to assume the risk essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, very rarely are our customers in the business of providing that infrastructure, mm-hmm. right? They're in different businesses. They're in mineral sciences and healthcare and entertainment. The last thing that they want to worry about is, how do we import servers into a country in the Middle East, and mm-hmm. who do we work with to set these facilities up, and what network providers do we connect to? I mean, that's just not their business, right? Mm-hmm. And if it's not their business, they're going to come to companies like us, where we have the expertise, we've done it before. By the inherent nature of expanding an organization into a place that you've never been, that means you've never been there, And so no matter how much research you do, you're doing it for the first time.
Right.
And there's going to be, there are going to be speed bumps and challenges along the way. By the inherent nature of what we do, we have done it before, so we can bring that knowledge base to companies that otherwise wouldn't have it.
Mm-hmm. So what would you say to companies that are incredulous that you can take on so much of this complexity and so many of these variables? You know, like you said, signing a new colo contract somewhere and bringing in hardware and hiring local resources to that foreign country and, you know, hiring a project manager in that location. I mean, that's a lot to take on for sure. I mean, and I know that you've got, 3 NOCs globally, and you've got staff in each of the major areas, but still, that is, it's not surprising that they would be a little bit incredulous. So how do you overcome that?
Manon, I kind of use this analogy, right? Your auto mechanic probably doesn't fill out his own tax forms at the end of the year. And the tax guy probably doesn't do his own plumbing when his water pipes burst in his walls. He calls a plumber. And most of our customers tend to be, again, businesses that aren't in the business of what we do. And when we phrase it that way, when we ask who they go to complete their tax forms at the end of the year, and who they call when the pipe bursts in the wall, obviously they call the taxman and they call the plumber. Mm-hmm. Well, I kind of look at us as the plumber of information technology, and we happen to do it on a global scale, and we happen to do it across a wide variety of subject matters. But that's our business, and that's what we do. I think that really kind of sums it up. Mm-hmm. And that it comes with challenges, but that's true of any business, right? Mm-hmm. The plumber's going to encounter situations that test his ability, but at the end of the day, you're going to him because you know that he's probably better suited at it than you are yourself.
Right. Right. Not something they want to be an expert in.
Exactly. Although I've tried before.
So let me ask you this. You've traveled all over the world numerous times. I'm sure you've got a story to share with us about just something funny that happened, or some crazy story that you'll be telling your grandkids someday. Can you share something with us?
Sure. So I just came back from the Middle East. I love traveling in the Middle East, and I was in Israel, and we were doing all the things that you're not supposed to do.
Uh-oh.
We were driving our own car, across into the West Bank, and you probably wouldn't have thought of doing this even just 3 or 4 years ago, but we're adventurous people, and we like interacting with people and whatnot. And we got to a particular military checkpoint, and we were surrounded by people with the Palestinian army, and they came up to us, and they're going through our car, and my fiance was holding an iPad that had the map of where we were trying to go.
Oh my gosh!
And one of the guards, he reached in and grabbed the iPad, and he pulled it out, and he starts playing with it, and he pulled up Angry Birds, and he started playing with Angry Birds, and I don't know how to play it, but he starts doing it.
Had he seen it before?
I assume he had.
Okay.
He must have. And so he starts playing this, and the rest of his team comes over, and they start playing it, and they start laughing, and what was an intimidating experience, this first time going across into the West Bank in a non-Palestinian vehicle, ended up being a lot of fun. We ended up hanging out at the side of the road with them, talking for a couple hours.
A couple hours?
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
So that was an interesting experience.
Nice icebreaker.
Yeah. I wasn't. I didn't know if they were stealing the iPad or saying,
Yeah,
"Well, this
confiscating.
this is your token to pass or not."
Yeah.
It was Angry Birds.
Oh, that's funny. So how did you get into tech? Because I know you started real young. What did that path look like?
I did. Actually, so my parents were both non-technology people, totally unrelated to technology. It was actually my grandfather. He was an engineer for Parsons. And from a very young age, I spent a lot of summers with him. And at 6 or 7 years old, I was in the Parsons mainframe computer room learning how to do punch cards.
Oh, wow.
And I fell in love with technology at that point, and engineering and physics and space exploration and quantum entanglement and everything else. But so I've always been a very science-minded person, and technology was the kind of driving force behind all of the passions that I had. And so it was really him. It was really my grandfather that got me into technology. What happened was I started a business in junior high and then high school, setting up, building computers for teachers and people in the local community, mostly so I could buy toys. My toys were a little strange. They were, high voltage transformers to make lightning and things like this. But I had a lab at my house and caused a lot of havoc in the neighborhood electrical system. But really it was the technology that kind of instilled my desire to be an entrepreneur, and I found it to be really, really fun to get to build things. And build companies and build teams of people and use technology to do really cool things. And so I've just had that passion ever since I was a little kid.
I think the last question that I'll ask you is just, what do you think that the 3 key factors are that an early stage tech company must have? That's starting off, either as a service provider or as a technology company, since there's so many different, diversions and distractions and and elements that go into it. Are there 3 main components you can think of?
People. People is always the most important. Who you work with sets a lot of the direction, and then the subsequent things really come from the people that you surround yourself with and the people that you choose to do business with. I would say vision and focus are the other 2. You're totally right. It's very easy in technology to be distracted by the latest bright shiny object, some new app, some new interesting widget. So it's really easy to get distracted. But then vision is important because you have to see maybe there is something that's over here in this bright shiny thing that's going by that actually could change the way we do things fundamentally. And it takes both micro and macro vision to see kind of what's going on a very minutia level, but it also takes a broad vision to see things from a big picture and see really what drives companies and people to do things the way they do them, for better or for worse. So I think those 3 elements, to me, those are the key things that a company needs, a technology company needs to be successful.
And so an add-on to that would be how many of your decisions are gut-based versus people, or versus where you sort of seek advice and mentorship?
99.9%. I very much value the opinion of everybody that surrounds me, and I'm personally I like to take everything in and see what everybody thinks about something, and then kind of internalize a little bit and let it settle out, and then I get a gut feeling usually. And sometimes it's ends up with what I exactly thought in the beginning, and sometimes it's the total opposite. But I'm definitely a gut decision maker, definitely.
Me too. Very good. All right. Well, those are all the questions that I had. So I thank you so much for spending the time with me. And for those of you out there, make sure that you're keeping an eye on Unitas Global and watching their continued growth. Thank you.
Thank you, Manon.